and thank you so much for tuning in to KBTV. I'm Dr. Karlisha Booze. Today, we're talking to Chief of Police Lawrence Spurgeon with Fort Valley Department of Public Safety. Good morning, and thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the topic today, we're talking about how the crime in Fort Valley have decreased over the years. And we're looking to see what strategies are you guys using to do that, because there's certain areas across the globe who still face high crime rates. So what are some of the strategies that you guys are using?
Well, the first thing is that we don't just look at crime as what is the police department doing. We try to use a holistic approach. And when I say holistic, I mean we address school justice. We also address mental health. I know me and you spoken before about our mental health initiatives. And we make sure we stay in close contact with our prosecutor's office, making sure, like, for instance, if we have a gang nexus with a charge, we utilize Georgia's laws that are on the books to prosecute those cases to the fullest extent of the law. One of the things that we've really worked with, if you look at our property crimes, is that we identified burglary early on as something that we wanted to make an area of focus. And in conjunction with the prosecutor's office, we made sure that if you committed a burglary in Fort Valley, that you were given the proper punishment for it.
Okay. Okay. So how effective is this? I do understand that all crime has to have a punishment. How effective is this?
Well, I mean, we started in 2014, but if you go back to, I think we had a historical high with burglaries of, I think, 230 at one time. And we basically had like a almost 80-75% decrease in burglaries and property crimes. Now that is part of a national trend. I would like to be able to say that, the police department can take credit for that. But what has happened is some of the things that have been learned over the years, as far as hardening targets, making sure that houses, the alarm systems are a lot better and a lot accessible. These camera systems are really helpful, and training the officers on how to utilize Ring cameras and other, cameras and stuff has helped identify suspects and then make sure that they're prosecuted. Another thing that goes unnoticed is the level of training in the state of Georgia for law enforcement officers has really increased. We do a lot better screening than when I first started. The police academy does a great job of giving you recruits that are ready to, jump in the car and get trained up a little bit more and ready to go. So the quality of law enforcement also has improved, but also the technology has improved as well, as far as preventing burglaries and thefts. And if you look at those numbers, I think that's a national trend.
Okay. Now, there's only so much law enforcement can do. Of course, you guys can enforce the law, but how can are your residents involved in helping these crime rates decrease in your area?
Yes, we started a program, and of course, COVID knocked a lot of stuff offline. But we started a program that we actually went to GMA and did a presentation about 2 or 3 years ago, called Front Porch Roll Call, where we invited our citizens to basically, instead of having roll call in our briefing area, we would go to their houses and have front porch roll call. And we had about 10 or 12 residents do that. And like I say, COVID knocked a lot of stuff back. We're hoping when the pandemic is over to start that back. But we do a lot of active community engagement, just making sure people are informed and advised about what's going on. For instance, we'll get a rash of entering autos. Entering autos now basically is people leaving their doors unlocked. And you'll have a crew of people come from out of town and come in and just check people's doors and see if people leave anything. So it's just as simple as letting people know, do not leave, guns and wallets and cell phones and laptops in your car unattended, and make sure that you lock your doors. Every once in a while, we'll start up with our 9 o'clock initiative, where we just make sure, hey, get that door alarm, get that key fob, hit it, make sure your doors are locked. Just stuff like that, little things. You don't eat an elephant all at one time. You have to take it a bite at a time. So it's little things like that, and staying consistent and staying engaged in the community is super important.
Okay. Now, just looking at the data that you provided, you have the robberies, you have the murder rate. Those numbers have decreased. And especially with me taking a look at the burglaries in 2014, there were 137. And by 2020, that had gone down to 50. So we definitely see that decrease. Looks like it's 63% of decrease. So that's good. And then the thefts, like you just mentioned, 264 in 2014, and now well, from 20 to 2020, excuse me, is 171. But I have a question in regards to robberies. Now, people sometimes get that confused, especially, people that aren't from the area.
Right.
Mostly commercial robberies are reported. Can you explain to me the different types of robberies just for clarification?
Well, so Georgia has two different kind of robberies. One is called armed robbery, and the other one is called strong armed robbery. And so armed robbery is when you have a weapon in your possession, you take something from somebody's immediate presence. The other one is when you just snatch or take something or threaten to use force from their immediate presence. So the FBI doesn't differentiate between a commercial armed robbery, a person-to-person armed robbery, or even if somebody just snatches a purse or takes something from somebody. So a lot of time those numbers are misconstrued because in the public's perception, when they see robbery, they immediately think somebody went in a convenience store, somebody went in the Waffle House, somebody went in the Dollar General and robbed it. The vast majority of the robberies we have here in the city of Fort Valley are person-to-person robberies. And sometimes those numbers can be misleading because a person might have reported a robbery, but the investigation might lead that there was actually a civil dispute or there was some kind of misunderstanding about an exchange of money. So the way crime numbers work is this: it's like a funnel. Stuff gets reported. The officer does the initial investigation. Sometimes it changes to something else. The detectives do an investigation, and sometimes it changes into something else. By the time it gets to court, an aggravated assault can turn down to a simple battery. But for consistency's sake, the FBI doesn't have time for all of that. They just need to know what crimes were reported at that particular time. And there's not a lot of time for people to go back and do micro analysis of the statistics. So that's why it's important to keep residents advised about this kind of stuff. And I appreciate having the opportunity to use these platforms to do that.
Absolutely. Another question I have in regards to that, sometimes that can impact, well, I would say all the time, right? That
Right.
could impact the overall image of how people who don't live in the area may look at the city of Fort Valley. In your opinion, how does that, I wouldn't say misleading information, but like you said, the initial call may be a robbery, but we don't know right away what type of robbery it is. How can that impact the overall image of us, the city of Fort Valley? I know just recently Fort Valley hosted their homecoming. So,
Right.
alumni coming back to the area, the shooting that happened, the night before the parade, that kind of pretty much got somebody like, hey, I don't know if I want to come to the area, but that's not common in the area, just looking at the data, right? So, how
Right.
would that impact the overall image when these types of, you know, ideas are out there as if this is something that's happening, if that makes sense?
So yeah, and I'm personally invested in this kind of stuff. I recruited me myself as an alumni. I recruited my little cousin who could have went to school anywhere in the United States, and thankfully he brought his academic talents here to Fort Valley State, where he's currently on the full academic scholarship. Well, if I'm in New York and I see 30 aggravated assaults, I don't know that half of those was somebody threatening somebody with a skillet. I think aggravated assault, people are shooting at each other. Now, as a public, as a peace officer, the shootings that we have are too many. One is too many. Two is too many. Anybody shooting at each other is too many.
Right.
If you look at the national crime trends, though, violent crime is on a little bit of an uptick. People are in kind of a bad spirit because of COVID. We all know that. But to answer the second part of that question, um, recruiting students, recruiting businesses, if those numbers are not accurately reported, then if I have a choice between a place that has a high crime rate and a place that has a little bit lower, then of course, if I'm a business owner, I'm gonna take that other option. And if
Mhm.
I'm a parent, I don't want to send my child somewhere that I think is gonna be unsafe. Um, the other thing that we have to look at is the disparaging impact, especially in places that have been underserved for several years, urban areas that have been underserved, that a large majority of the population left in the 70s and early 80s to go to other areas. Um, we have to be careful about how we judge those places and make sure we're judging them by a reasonable standard. When resources leave and money leave, it takes time to recoup those things. So I don't want to say there's a sinister plot going on, but we have to think about the economic impact as well. Fort Valley is one of those places that was chosen between us and Athens to be kind of the focal point and the hub of the marijuana and hemp industry in the state of Georgia. That's going to be a $1 billion industry. So there's a lot of money on the table. So we have to be careful about how our image and how our branding is presented. Lastly, and I said this in my media release, is that too many times we use postal codes, postal areas instead of the actual municipality of Fort Valley or the municipality of East Point, or College Park or wherever you want, whatever Port Wentworth or whatever city you want to use. I use Port Wentworth. Port Wentworth is part of the Savannah metropolitan area. Okay. Now, if you're riding on I-95 through that area, you might not know you're in Port Wentworth or Porterdale or these other cities that are in the same situation we are. If I'm riding down 75, you really don't know when you leave for Byron in the Fort Valley, and you just know you're in an area.
Right.
So we have to look at these crime stats as far as the whole entire area and not just particular parts as well. But these real estate websites and stuff like that sometimes don't they, and I don't think they do it on purpose. They don't know the difference between the municipality of Fort Valley and where Fort Valley starts and where Warner Robins starts and where Byron starts and where Fort Valley ends. They just see something says Fort Valley and they go with those numbers. So sometimes they're a little bit skewed.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Chief. One last question I do want to ask. So for our viewers out there, that are living in different areas, we see the success of you getting your crime rates down in your area. Just a quick overview. What can they do? Just 3 bullet points. What can they do to help get their numbers low as well?
First thing I would say, as far as what you can do as a citizen, is harden your home target. Make sure that those windows are locked and secured. If it means, like the old people used to do, cutting off a mop handle and sticking it up and prying it up in there, as well as keeping the window locked, then do that. Make sure your bushes and your hedges are cut down low. Do you have adequate lighting around the house? Number 2, invest in a security system. These security systems are uber cheap now. You can go to AT&T, you can go to Cox Cable, you can go to Verizon. All of them offer a security system that you can really get on as part of your phone package and pay as part of your monthly fee, and it's all collected up into one thing. And if you don't have a camera system in 2021, you are really hustling backwards. These camera systems are super cheap. They're a huge investment for your house, and they are big deterrents to crime. Lastly, hold your district attorney, and a lot of times people stop with the chief and the sheriff. The district attorney has a huge, huge responsibility in making sure that crime rates go down, because us arresting people and them not getting prosecuted, it does no good. What it does is it emboldens and encourages even more crime. One thing we've been super successful with here in Fort Valley is making sure that we use the Georgia Criminal Gang and Terrorism Act. If you commit a crime and there's a gang nexus in Bibb, Peach, or Crawford County, I can promise you, you're going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So those are some things. Once again, a lot of this stuff we don't ever want to see. I never want to see anybody get shot again. I've seen too many people, too many humanity's inhumanity towards each other. I've seen it on too many levels, on too many occasions. I don't want to see it. But what we have to do is we can't have a knee-jerk reaction when we have an incident. And that was the purpose of me putting out those crime stats, just letting people know that, hey, all is well. Things are actually better than they seem, and don't be a prisoner of the moment and the negativity that's going on right now. Sad for the young man who lost his life. Sad for the people who got injured. But let's look at this as a learning opportunity for how we can do better moving forward.
All right. Thank you so much, Chief. And I hope all our viewers out there just take some notes and try to keep your community safe as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.